I was a kid that didn't have access to art, and I remember that very first time when I saw art in person, and I had a moment. You know, you hear about this where people might cry in front of a work or laugh, or whatever response you have, that's appropriate. But I remember that moment, and it wasn't until I was in college that I really had that moment. So I think it's really important to access art in person, to see these things in person, to hear from your friends, neighbors, family, whoever is there with you, maybe your classmates with you inside of the museum, to hear how they are feeling and how they are responding, how they are interpreting work.
Systematically within museums, there's been a paywall system, especially with larger galleries. Typically, you can enter into one space, but you have to pay an additional fee to enter in another. And here at the Barrick, what I think I love so much about it is that you don't have to worry about a paywall, which no one should. I think it's incredibly important that you can come in, not have to worry about, well, should I eat today, or maybe should I see art? Creating that access, and especially with the shows that we do here, where we try to have every community member visible, and create that access in order for someone to see themselves represented, that initial access point is what's the most vital.
DC is like full of the Smithsonian museums, right? Those are all free institutions. You could walk into all of those museums and all of a sudden that stuff was accessible, like whether it was an art museum, a history museum, or whatever museum, a science museum, there was no price of entry. And as a result, all that sort of information, all that stuff was just available, like a library, like the way books at a library might be available. The moment you take away sort of like having to pay for attendance, having to check in with a guard, that you can just walk into a space, that is frictionless. And that means you're going to go back, right? And that means you're going to engage with all of this material as kind of a public good that is your right. That is your right to knowledge.
Art belongs, or should belong, to everyone. It touches all of us. Everyone should be able to express their own voices, their own walks of life. I think it's very important to have representation, especially in institutions like UNLV, and be able to give that to everyone, especially at a young age.
We oftentimes see that, there's so many people who miss out on opportunities to find growth because they can't afford it. The fact that the Barrick is making it accessible and easeful for folks to come into a museum space and feel seen and feel wanted. Because oftentimes in some museum spaces, you don't see yourself reflected, whether it's through the staff, whether it's through the programming. And I know the Barrick does such a beautiful job of being able to bridge that gap, right? And telling you that like you can be here, you can be seen, and that you can work hard, you know what I mean? You continue, to make the most out of the things that you love by way of the creation of your artwork. The history of the Barrick is going to really ring true for so many years, and it's gonna continue to change lives, for artists, artists of color, queer artists, people of varying ethnicities that have been in that space and have been seen, right? It's showing, right? Like it's gonna be in the history books, I tell you, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna continue to grow, and it's gonna continue to build community. And there's, whole generations of artists that are seeing that they can be artists, right? So it's just key, especially now.